Hey, we are on our last section here. Finally, we are to geometric sequences and series today. So, again, we started off in this chapter. We started off with sequences, then we did series, then we did arithmetic sequence and series. So, we used some formulas for adding and subtracting. I hate when my shirt is like changing weird colors. It throws me off. I can't look at it. Then we did geometric sequences and series today. So, what we're doing with that is we are going to deal with sequences that have a ratio. So we're going to multiply by the same number each time. And then again, like we did in the last section, we're going to use a formula to help us find nth terms and to find sums. So we're going to break this into two lessons again, just like we did with the arithmetic, because otherwise it could be a lot of work if we just put one in or we just did one big video. So we're going to split it up into two. Hopefully it shouldn't be too hard. Once you learn how to use the formula from arithmetic, then hopefully geometrics is not too bad. Geometric sequence, remember, R is ratio. Ratio stands for what you multiplied each time. So if I've got the ratio 3, 9, 27, if you want to find the ratio, all you've got to do is take a number and divide by the number in front of it. So 27 divided by 9 would get me 3. And if I wanted to make sure it was the same ratio, I would pick two other numbers, divide them, and make sure I got 3. All right, so how do I find R? Divide, take term, divide by previous. And we're going to need that because with adding and subtracting, it's pretty easy to tell. But with geometric, it's a little bit harder to tell sometimes. So that's what we're doing here. So we're trying to find the common ratio. We're going from 1 to -4, -4 to 16, 16 to -64. You got to just think, what number am I multiplying each time? Maybe you see it, maybe you don't. R equals -4. Multiply by -4, multiply by -4, multiply by -4. If I can't just do that in my brain, I take any term, divide by the number in front of it. It gets me -4. Next one, 3, 18, 108, 648. What am I multiplying each time? Well, to get from 3 to 18, I would multiply by 6. And just to make sure that that's true, I'm going to take, I meant to shrink that down, 108 divided by 18. I took a term divided by the one in front of it. Yep, it's 6. What about 648 divided by 108? 648 divided by 108. Yep, that one works as well. So we're just double checking to make sure what we're doing is correct. Okay, my ratio is 6. Next one, 160, 36. Yeah, that one's a little bit tougher. I don't just see that one right off the bat. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a number and divide by the one in front of it. So I'm going to take 100. I'm going to take 60 divided by 100, and I get 0.6. My number is getting smaller, so it makes sense that it's a decimal here. I'm multiplying by 6/10 or 3/5 or 0.6. So just to double check to make sure it's the same ratio for each of them, I'm going to take 36 divided by 60. Oh, yep, I get 0.6. What about 21.6 divided by 36? Take the number divided by the one in front of it. Yep, same thing. My ratio is 0.6. Okay, makes sense that it's a decimal because I am getting smaller and smaller and smaller. 2, -14, 98, -686. I'm guessing my ratio is negative because I'm going back and forth from positive and negative, positive and negative. 2 times what gets me -14? Well, that would be -7. But just to make sure, I'm going to take 98 divided by -14. Yep, -7. Or -686 divided by 98. Yep, -7. We're good there. So we divided by the same thing before each one. We're good to go. That's finding R. So with that being said, we're just going to continue finding some sequences. So find the next terms in the sequence. 4, 8, 16, 32. Well, this is in geometric. They're telling me it's geometric, so all I got to know is my R. So in this case, my R is 2, because 4 times 2 is 8, 8 times 2 is 16, 16 times 2 is 32. Just find the next three terms. So all I got to do is 32 times 2, which would be 64. 64 times 2 is 128, and 128 times 2, 256. So again, all I had to do really was find my R and then work from there. Same thing on the next one. 1, -3. 9, -27. What's my R? Well, I can see it, but if you can't, take any term and divide by the one in front of it. They already told me it was geometric, so my r is going to be true. My r is -3. Well, yeah, that makes sense. 1 times -3 would get me -3. -3 times -3 would be 9. Then -27. Then 81. Then 81 times -3 is -243. And then that would be 729, I think. 729. Again, once you find what that r is, it's just a matter of typing into your calculator. 800, -400. 200, -100. The number keeps getting smaller and smaller by a half. And so my ratio is -0.5 here. And if I don't know that, I'm going to take any number and divide by the one in front of it. So I'm going to take -400 divided by 800. Yep, my r is -0.5. So -100, then I'd get 50. Cut that in half, -25. Cut that in half, 12.5. Notice that the signs alternate back and forth when your ratio is negative. All right, so that makes sense so far. Hopefully, we're just dealing with r's and working our way through. Now on the back side, we're going to do what we did before, where we're going to have an nth term equation. We're going to find a particular term using a sub n. We're going to plug in what our first term is. We're going to plug in what our ratio is, and then we're also going to plug in whatever number term we're looking for. Make sure if your r is negative, you got to put in parentheses. That's the number one mistake students make here. So find a particular term of the geometric series. We're finding the 8th term, so a sub 8, for which a sub 1 is -3, so -3 there, and my r is -2. I'm finding the 8th term, so instead of 8n minus 1, I'm going 8 minus 1, so obviously we can just use the number 7. That's my formula. It's going to find me the 8th term, just like we did in the last section, so -3 times -2, and I'm just going to raise that thing to the 7th power. These numbers should be pretty big today, 384 there. We're just doubling it back and forth and back and forth. A sub 8 is equal to that. We plugged in a sub 1. We plugged in a sub 1. We plugged in what our r was. We plugged in what our numbered term was. We are finding the 8th term. So once we plugged in all that information, we just typed in our calculator. Find the 9th term. So we're finding a sub 9, for which a sub 1 is 1,000. My ratio is -0.2, so we're going to get smaller and smaller and smaller because my ratio is less than 1. I'm finding the 9th term, so it's going to be 9 minus 1 up there. So I'm going to take 1,000. Too many zeros now. 1,000, parentheses, -0.2, to the 8th power. Type it in, hit enter. Woo, 0.00256. That became a really small number because I was getting only a really small portion of the number each time. 1,000 became -200, and that goes even smaller and smaller and smaller. That became 40, and by the time I get to the 9th term, it gets pretty small. Let's keep it going. Find a sub 7. So we're finding a sub 7. A sub 1 is 20. My ratio goes there, and then it's n minus 1, so 7 minus 1. I need to know my r. If I want to find my r, I take any number and divide by the one in front of it. 10 divided, my ratio is a half, or 0.5. So in my calculator, I'm taking 20 times 0.5. And what power am I raising that to? 6th power. 0.3125. We're getting pretty small pretty quick. If you don't believe me, you could write it out. 20, 10, 5, 2.5, 1.25, and keep just dividing by 2 each time to get your numbers. All right, I feel like we got an idea for that. Let's keep going from there. Actually, let's just do this last one because the last part we've done that plenty of times, so I'm not going to worry about that. Let's do this last one. Find a sub 8 for that setup right there. So we're doing a sub 8. A sub 1 is -2 times my ratio, and since I'm finding the 8th term, it's 8 minus 1. What's my ratio going to be? Well, I go from -2 to 8, 8 to -32. I am multiplying by -4. And so in my calculator, I'm going to type in -2, parentheses, -4, parentheses, to the 7th power. Type it all in, hit enter. 32,768. That's a pretty big number, but that is what the 8th term would be. Again, if you don't like doing that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And you could make -2 and then 8 and then -32 and then multiply by -4, multiply by -4, and see what you get in the end. That takes a lot longer. Our formula is going to do it the best way. Geometric sequences, hopefully that makes sense using the formula. Very similar to arithmetic. I'm going to make another statement or another video here in a second and talk about geometric series, but hopefully you're making sense so far.